Hey everybody, welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today, it's going to be a little different for me. I don't normally delve into gear reviews or anything like that. I normally do build videos and then some PvP footage, PvE footage and stuff like that. But I think there's something that's very important that is coming up very quickly and it needs to be addressed or it needs to be talked about. And I'm going to beg and plead that we get as much interaction on this video as possible. And so I'm going to post this in all of my guilds, in Discord, where I can, and I want to ask you to do the same. So that way this can be a topic that's being discussed right now. There are other content creators that are talking about this right now as well. Is there no one else? Unified Gaming, by all means go check those guys out as well. But I need to do my part for this too. So we're going to discuss this real quickly. I'm just going to fill everybody in on what's being proposed and what the current problem is with the state of PvP in Cyrodiil. Everybody understands and knows that we've had a lot of lag issues. We've had abilities not firing, bar swapping, just tons and tons of problems, and it continues to get worse and worse. And anyways, I like the fact that so Rich Lambert, actually the creative director for ZOS ZeniMax Online Studios, he actually released this, and I like the fact that look, we're drawing to light, or we're calling to attention what the actual problem is. I'm just going to read this really quick. I do not want to spend a whole lot of time on this. In the descriptions below, I am going to link this for you guys, so that way you can see this article and read it again yourself. And then I'm also gonna link the most current patch notes for you guys, so that way you can kind of see what other proposed changes are going on. But anyways, jumping right in. As part of our ongoing performance optimization, we have been spending a lot of time analyzing and addressing problems in Cyrodiil. I'm going to give a summary of what has happened over the years, what we have been doing to alleviate the problems, and our future plans. When talking about ESO server performance, it is important to understand that all abilities in the game, with some exceptions, have a soft limit on the number of times they can be executed. As an example of a hard limit on an ability, it is an ability that can be executed one time every 2 seconds. So something that's on a universal or a global cooldown enforced by the server. ESO doesn't have many of those. Instead, we designed the game to have soft limits, which means you can execute as many abilities as you want as long as you have the resources, stamina or magicka, to cast them. There's a global cooldown timer on all abilities, which is set to 1000 milliseconds. And so basically what this is saying is the thing that we know, like, and love about PvP, right, is that it's how quick the fighting is, you know. And if we put a build together that can sustain, we can do a lot of activities or a lot of abilities in a short amount of time. Okay. The design goal of the soft limits in any game is to allow players to create builds that let them execute abilities more often depending on the build choices made, and not to have hard ceilings on damage or healing per second. This gives a lot of control to the player, which makes for a really fun, interesting system, but it can lead to situations where players cast too many abilities too quickly and continuously if strict limits on resources are not enforced. Over the years, players' power has grown considerably with the addition of the champion point system, various armors and weapon sets, and changes to abilities. We have reached the stage where players, with the right build, can cast near infinite number of abilities. If you add in a properly managed group with some focused on damage and some focused on healing and regen boost, you have perpetually running, never-ending stream of abilities. This is absolutely true. With that in mind, consider how area of effect abilities work when cast. They look at a specific target area, almost always the area directly around the caster, find targets and perform the abilities. Each of these steps requires server calculations. At launch, Cyrodiil's processes were able to keep up with the number of AoEs cast because most players couldn't cast that many of them. They ran out of magicka and stamina, so they had to use AoEs judiciously. Over time, as players' knowledge grew and regen builds grew in power, more players could cast more and more AoEs before running out of resources. During these years, we found and fixed many performance issues in Cyrodiil, and we continue to do so. We have fixed significant issues, uncovered more, and continue to find and fix it with every update. However, one fundamental issue remains. At some point, we crossed a threshold where most players in PvP were able to cast endless AoE abilities without ever running out of resources. This is done through player knowledge, builds, and group mechanics, resulting in a constant stream of AoEs that many players never using any other type of ability. And I've seen this, in ball groups and things like that. They just load up their bars with AoEs. In a one-on-one situation, they wouldn't be able to hold their own at all. But in a group, they're dangerous, right? This is not what we intended, but part of the fun of Elder Scrolls is designing a build that has unexpected and powerful results, and we allowed it. However, as this behavior grew more prevalent, we reached a point where casting so many continuous AoE abilities in such a small area started to overwhelm the server process for that area, leading to situations where the lag meter spikes and the server becomes unresponsive for a period of time. Our initial response to this problem started with Update 22, was to find and fix more than a few problems with AoE ability calculations and make them more performant, and we stayed mostly ahead of the problem. But as more players reached maximum champion level and more players started utilizing this particular method of AoE spamming, we've reached a point where we cannot fix this issue around the edges. We need to address the core problem, which we will be starting with Update 27. To do this, we will need to first do some analysis, and we can only do this on the live servers. As much as we try to avoid running testing on live servers, there are only places where the combination of player behavior, specific builds, and mass battles happen. So starting the week of August 24th, we will be running a series of tests on the live PC servers, both NA and EU, only in Cyrodiil. Please note that we will not be running these tests on any console server. Each test should take about a week, but but if needed, we will extend the testing time. Getting ahead of myself. The first round of the tests we are planning will focus on AoE abilities in Cyrodiil, and will make it more difficult for AoE abilities to be used, adjusting cooldowns, cost, regen builds of all AoEs, etc. Specific details on the test will be running in Cyrodiil as followed. Test 1, shared global AoE cooldowns, 3-second timer. This test adds a global 3-second shared cooldown to an AoE ability. This means that when you cast an AoE, you will not be able to cast another for 3 seconds. For example, as a Templar, if I cast Ritual of Retribution, I wouldn't be able to cast Puncturing Sweeps for 3 seconds. Break the class. Test 2, individual AoE cooldowns, 3-second timer. This test adds an individual AoE cooldown to each AoE ability. This means that when you cast an AoE, you will not be able to cast the same AoE ability for 3 seconds. For an example, as a Templar, if I cast Puncturing Sweep, I wouldn't be able to cast Puncturing Sweep for 3 seconds. Break the class. Test 3, no cooldown, global ramping AoE cast. This test adds a global ramping AoE cost for each AoE cast, similar to how streak or roll dodge works. When you cast an AoE, you receive a debuff for 5 seconds. Each stack of debuff increases the cost of any AoE cast. Maybe that's an option. It's still going to break the class on classes that, like with Magplar or Stamplar, their primary spammable is that. So you're making it to where they can't stay in the fight as easily as others, and you also don't want to force players to go towards weapon abilities. Like now all of a sudden Stamplars are using D-swing, and Magplars have to add in something different, and so. Test 4, individual AoE cooldown, 3-second timer, and a global ramping AoE cost. And so we're kind of putting it all together here. During this time, any of these tests are active, we will be awarding double alliance points for anyone in active Cyrodiil. Double alliance points is not going to be enough of an incentive, in my opinion, to get people to go to Cyrodiil to participate in a very broken game. Their classes, if we do not change the classes in their current state, and we're just going to try and do this test. If I jump on a Magplar and I'm not able to use my puncturing sweeps effectively or heal effectively or put down my rune or do anything effectively, I'm not going to play a Magplar, right? The class is broken. You're not going to get any amount of successful testing out of me. Hey, for the next week, could you play this broken class? That would be great in PvP. No, it's just not going to happen. And double alliance points is not worth the headache or the strain that we're going to subject ourselves to. Okay. Um, so the reward needs to be crown crates, or it needs to be something significant that you just get the numbers of people out there for it. People will go regardless of how broken their classes are, or all of a sudden you'll see that everyone realized, hey, this class didn't get hit near as hard as the other classes. It's halfway playable, and so they'll take that class out there. Anyways, double alliance points to go for an entire week for one testing period. Um, is it one testing period per? So we've got like 4 weeks of testing. I don't know. I'll have to look into that again. But anyways, double alliance points not worth it to play a broken game. That's just going to be frustrating, right? After we complete the above tests, we may try other combinations of cooldowns, costs, and regen value on AoE abilities. However, we need to run these tests first and then assess the data. We will then let everyone know what we find and how we will move forward. We will be very upfront, but please be aware that if these tests confirm our hypothesis, then chain casting AoE abilities will no longer form the core of ESO PvP experience in a way it has for the last few years. We would then go through each class and ensure that there are viable builds for each and make adjustments as necessary. So you're sending us into the test with the current builds in their current fashion, but you're going to hamstring the builds, and it basically is going to get the results that you want. It's going to get the results that they want. They want to slow down PvP. They want to take PvP to a different spot, and so that's scary. Elder Scrolls Online came out 2014. Here we are 2020, so it's been out 6 years. Keep that in mind. So 6 years in, and we're talking about changing PvP in a dramatic fashion. I don't think that sounds like a sustainable business model or a smart move, but that's just me. You'll upset a lot of your player base. Now, I'm not saying that this is the end of the world and they might not bounce back from this. What I'm saying, because we're always going to have, like, 2 weeks from now, there's some new player that's going to download the game and they won't know any different, right? It's like repopulating the planet. And um, the person that downloads the game a week from now, they don't know any different. That's all they've ever known. But everyone else that does PvP knows, like, loves PvP in its current fashion, minus the lag and the ability swapping and all the problems we're seeing because of everything that this talks about. Everyone that likes our current state of PvP, they're not going to, for the most part, be happy with the changes. It's just going to be an all new game from a PvP standpoint. So the code for these changes will be going into today's PTS patch, and we will be running some basic tests through the day on Tuesday in Cyrodiil to ensure we're able to make the above changes without requiring any maintenance or downtime. Once we launch Update 27 for PC August 24th, we will announce when one of the tests are beginning through an in-game announcement, and we'll have a forum thread detailing which test is currently being performed. Remember, these tests will be limited to Cyrodiil, so AoE abilities in other PvP spaces, Imperial City and Battlegrounds, remain unchanged for now. We will evaluate how these tests go and let everyone know next steps. Thanks for being patient and understanding with these tests. They are extremely important for the team, and we will help us towards improving Cyrodiil's performance. Okay, so that's that. Rather than I said my piece on all of this. We're breaking classes, and we are going to change the fundamental style of PvP right now, which is what a lot of people really enjoy. They enjoy PvP in its current fashion. Okay, I don't even think this is an option. Like, I don't even think I like the upfront how they're upfront with this. We've recognized the problem, and because there's been a power creep, and everybody knew there'd be a power creep, because of gear sets and player ability and skill and champion points and, all these proc sets, and we add mythic items and all these different things. So everybody knew that there was going to be a power creep. And it's very easy for everybody to say, well, just update your servers. Well, I don't know what goes into updating your servers. Is that even on the table? You know, but here's what I propose. Okay, you already have the answer. You don't need to do any of this testing at all. You don't even need to do any of this testing at all. The answer is as simple as adding zones to Cyrodiil. You have a huge map here. Cyrodiil is a huge map. Add zones and make it just like Imperial City. Imperial City, even during mid-year mayhem, when there is absolutely crazy amount of numbers of people there, and they're spamming AoEs, and the ball groups are going around, and and not only that, not only are there ball groups going around, there's NPC interaction similar to with guards at the resources and guards at the keeps, but there's world bosses as well. Okay, like there's these roaming world bosses that have completely different dynamics, mechanics. Okay, and some of the best, most entertaining and memorable moments in Imperial City were when we were fighting outnumbered and we pulled a double banner down in the sewers, or we pulled two double banners to the same area. There's two of us, there's eight of them, and the double banners are helping kick their butt. And it's awesome. I know I can survive, by adding it to adding the double banner to the equation. Can you? And so here's what I propose. I propose that the starting areas be one zone. Makes sense. And keep in mind, I understand you might have to restructure. ZOS might have to restructure where resources are, or not resources, but where some of the delves are. You might have to move the location of the delve. Look, this war has been going on for 6 years. If you can't think that the landscape can change in 6 years, the this river might have run off here, or the, we've been fighting on this land for 6 years with trebuchet and ballistas and just immense craziness over the last 6 years. Restructure Cyrodiil to represent the current state of PvP and what it's capable to do. We know that, so a server could be pop blocked, right? AD, DC, and EP, they all have X amount of numbers on the server. I don't know what that number is, and maybe I should know, or maybe it's not known. It's not a known number. They just have bars, right? So you hit 3-bar pop, and, that's exciting. Ooh, there's 3 bars of DC. Let's get them. And I'm saying that the same way that the districts in Imperial City work, these need to operate similar fashion as a district. And you can make it controlled. Change the landscape. This is a big open area, and maybe landscape kind of prevents you from traversing certain areas, but change the roadways to certain select endpoints. But the reason I propose this is the starting areas are here, and yeah, you still need to take the scrolls to the starting areas. That's fine. If this is a instance based and only X amount, let's say number one, we lower the amount of groups down to 12, right? And let's say you can only have, at maximum, EP can only have represented in this battlefield at most 2 full groups, so 24 people balling around or moving around. Let's assume that that's what they're doing. All right. Well, AD can have that many in this zone as well, and DC. So that's a really small area to end up having, you know, 60, 70 people fighting. But if we can contain it to this area, and maybe that's too big of a number. I don't know. They'll have a better idea of what the numbers are. Look at your mid-year mayhem numbers. How many people are allowed in a district or in a zone? Because I can tell you during mid-year mayhem, um, there was a little bit of a hiccup, but whatever numbers you're pushing mid-year mayhem, that's what you push in these areas right here. And so the way we have it set up right now is we have a northern, a north zone, and then we have a zone just south of it. And you can see this one's got one keep, it's got one city, and then we have this here. Same with over here, one keep, one city or town, this over here. One keep, one town, and this over here. Okay, so if you make that one zone, and maybe this area needs to be extended out a little farther for a full playable area in that. Okay, full playable area in this zone, full playable area in this zone. I think you add this. This is purposely here. So let's say right now DC is coming over to get EP scrolls, and let's say this is pop blocked. Okay, there's a intense fighting going on, and all three factions have 24 people representing them within this area to take these keeps. If the current number of people allowed in Cyrodiil is 100 or 200, I don't know what the number is, but if there's more people on the map, then they should be moving over here and coordinating. So while this is at pop block, how are we doing down here? And EPs coordinating with one another to actually take multiple things. Okay, and so some people might say, I'm going to be bouncing all over the place, but I'm basically establishing my thought process on this. Some people might say, well, these zones won't hardly have anyone in them. Well, they don't hardly have anyone in them anyways, unless I have a group of 6 and I say, hey, let's go take Bruma, and let's go take, we take the north. North holds, like, no matter what, we have this keep. We try and fight for this keep all the time, or whatever it is. And so people can say, well, that area won't have a lot of people in it. That is fine, because we're weighing it against what? Changing the game drastically, changing every race, or every class, I should say, and their abilities and their skill bars and the way they function, right? Adding global cooldowns to abilities, like a complete change of way of life for PvP. When you weigh it versus that, make this damn thing a zone. Make it a zone that you can zone into, and if there's nobody up there, there's nobody up there. Roll up there with your group, take everything there, roll down to the next group. Anyways, that's not a viable excuse when you weigh it against what we're weighing it against, okay? I think that if DC decides that they want to come get EP scrolls, I think we need to add, like, Robin Hood and the King's Highway or whatever. And that highway, I think you move the bridges to select points on this highway, and that kind of be like the hot gate. And so if you want to have a group of 24, 25 people in, maybe these starting zones have the total, if 100 people from AD can be, 3 bars is 100 people, or 3 bars is 200 people, whatever that number is. They could be within this zone. That's no problem. And if there's intense fighting in it, there's intense fighting in it. We're going to see Cyrodiil in its current state, and these starting areas. But once you push out past that, then that's fine, right? It starts opening up a little bit. But so make it that. We're not pop blocked in these starting areas, okay? And then these hot zones that travel between the districts. Let's say there's intense fighting going on in this district right here, intense fighting going on in this district right here, or this area, this zone right here. And all 3 factions are completely population blocked in both of those. You can still come over through the hot gate, traveling over 2 separate bridges to get to, the fights that have to happen to capture the scroll, and then you have to take it through this small area and fight your way back. And you could think about if this is pop blocked, this is pop blocked, and we make these footprints here, these highways, part of, total population for EP, there could be some serious crazy fights along this highway, right? On these bridges and stuff like that. And so that's one thing that I propose is free traffic flow that forces people into a hot gates where numbers, while numbers matter, think the movie 300, we can hold off with smaller numbers. And so they did come over here, and there's 40 of them, and they've got both scrolls and they're running them back. The group of 24 from here comes down, exits into the hot gate or whatever you want to call it, and they have an intense fight and hold it off. And I think that that would be really cool. They'll run into the same problems that current world Cyrodiil is, and it's not always bad. Um, and I think you could probably get away with that. And you have to assume everyone that's on the board isn't going to be in this one spot. Some are in this district trying to do objectives this district by, and whatever. But here's what I propose is add these instances or these districts. Here's the next thing that I propose is that these areas right here, these keeps right now, these are all what you'll need to push for Emperor, okay? And right now, one of the things that we see is kind of this Game of Thrones where Ebonheart Pact is working with DC, and we're kind of changing of guard. We're going to take these keeps, flip these keeps, and if it's the whole political side of it. And I don't think that Zoss or anybody stopped the political side of it. This is part of it. This is part of life. This is part of the world. But AD will contact DC and they'll say, hey, we're not going to contest you guys. We're going to let you flip the map. However, we're looking to flip the map after that. Do we have an agreement? And so you see people playing the Game of Thrones. That's fine. It doesn't always work out, and you don't always have. If AD tried to make that arrangement, not all of AD is on that same page, and there's groups of AD out there trying to mess that up. And so the Game of Thrones is completely fine in this scenario. But these three districts or three areas, however this breaks down, I think that you need to add a situation that's very similar to Cyrodiil, or sorry, the districts in Imperial City. And we need to make it to where there is NPC interaction, heavier NPC interaction in this area. These are highly contested areas. This is pushing for emperorship, okay? And I think that in these areas we should have random encounters, very similar to the random encounters when you have the Daedra that come down and they spawn randomly. Now, if you're just on the move, by the time you hear the sound of the portal appearing behind you, we're not talking dolmens. We're talking about the little interactions, random encounters where the Daedra appear or the vampires appear, and they don't aggro you immediately. What I'm proposing is that you add, just similar to the districts and random world bosses, I think that you actually bring in the heroes. Sorry about the quality of this picture. I just grabbed it and I had to blow it up, so you could see. But so I think that DC should be represented by a hero. I think EP, and I think that they should have their own elite force with them too, their own fight mechanics and everything else. And now you can't kill these heroes, but we can actually bring them to a knee and they have to retreat, something along those lines, and it needs to be epic. And the reason I say this is, just like I was telling you before, some of the craziest stories that we had down in the sewers was fighting outnumbered in these corridors, or fighting outnumbered, and next thing we know, a double banner aggroes us, or the people that we're fighting pull a double banner to try and add it to the fold or add it to the equation. And it made for some really interesting interactions, where people were dying to NPC fire, and it just opens up a whole new dynamic of, NPC encounter. And so I think that there needs to be artillery. You know how we're using the ballistas and trebuchets and stuff like that. There needs to be an NPC trebuchet or ballista presence in this area. I think that it probably needs to do like 20% more damage than what a targeted player can do in damage. And everybody has a hard time, not standing in red. I think you need to incorporate that, and I think you need to incorporate these elite level, maybe Razumdar and the Queen's Eye, their group arrives, and it's a random encounter. It's shown on the map, very similar to the mace. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. Volendrung. If Volendrung's been sighted or whatever. Well, if you're in this zone, it might say the Queen's Eye has arrived, and everybody's like, oh no, and they pull up the map. Well, AD's not like, oh no. And I think you incorporate a situation where the longer the Queen's Eye, I think the Queen's Eye should be immediately aggroing anyone that's in this zone. That's where the Queen's Eye is going to. And those random world encounters that we talk about with the vampires or the Daedra that come out of the ground, just appear. I think it'd be something very similar to that. The Queen's Eye has appeared at Razumdar, and make him be epic. Make Razumdar be epic. Razumdar, make him have a world boss mechanic similar to, the districts, and make him hopping around the battlefield. Make people have to have detect pots just to pick him up, and when he hits hard. Bring a whole new dynamic to the battlefield. And the longer that elite group is up, maybe every group gets champion, we won't call them champion points, we'll call them hero points or something separate. Or there's, when they're on the field, AD gets an AP boost. There you go. We're figuring this out right now on the fly. When Razumdar and his group are on the field, AD gets an AP boost. Significant. That makes that group a focal point for EP and DC. We got to get them out of here, okay? Because AD's happy with that. That said, maybe EP and DC, they don't care how the AP rolls out. We don't care who's going to be at the top of the charts. Maybe that applies in another fashion, but I think adding something along those lines makes it very interesting. Excuse me. Another option that you can do too is make an instance, like a queued instance or something. If you're in this area, let's say once every hour, I don't know what this is, but we'll say once every hour, 4 random EP players get a message that says you've been chosen as Evan Hartpack's hero. Do you accept the call? And if you hit yes, you immediately go to a death match that plays on a map that's similar to this, or a smaller version somewhere, or one of the current deathmatch maps. That's fine. But the outcome of that death match, you're placed with 4 random people that were playing in this zone. AD is the same way. They're placed with 4 random people. If AD has 0 presence in this, EP has 0 presence, then that queue never pops. It just doesn't happen because there's no presence from the rival factions to make the queue. Okay, but AD could not be represented at all. DC has 3 people on the map. That's it. So it's 3 on 4. DC has 1 person on the map single-handedly taking resources. Make resources harder to take too, which, side note, make up the resources, especially in this area. I don't care about this area. Keep them where they're currently at. Some people can't solo resources right now as is. But make these areas, the resources, harder to capture, like single. And so anyways, there's so many cool things that you could do with this. That's the answer. The answer is restructure Cyrodiil and add zones and add additional functionality. And so good magicians, they will do something that distracts you. And so right now, so many people will be disgusted or unhappy with this concept. why the hell we gotta do this? Just update your damn servers, blah blah blah. But we don't know what's going on, and maybe that's not an option. But if you're talking about going in and rebalancing every single class and every single ability and changing, adding global cooldowns and doing all this crazy stuff, PvP works acceptable. It works good. It's a lot of fun in Imperial City and the districts. Bring what you've learned there here and do it in Cyrodiil. And so that's what I propose. And I also think that you need to incorporate these guys into make these guys random encounter world bosses. And I also think that within a zone, as long as maybe the threshold, the deciding factor is there's enough people within this zone that a random queue can occur, and it'll say you've been selected as Aldmeri Dominion's champion. Do you accept the call? And we can call that, the champion's call or whatever it is. And wherever you're at or whatever you're doing, you get called into this instance. And I also think let's talk about what that does to the dynamic of a group that's operating. Let's say they can decline it too. Just make them decline it and it goes to someone else. That's fine. On to the next, right? The same way Dungeon Finder finds the next person because this dude declined, he waited in queue for an hour and then missed his queue or declined it, he waited in queue for an hour as DPS. Um, Maybe make it to where their roles are dependent on how that works too. And so it's now required that as soon as you zone in, you're required to select your role. I'm a healer, I'm a tank, I'm a DPS. Okay, and based on if you selected your role properly, if everybody says they're healers or whatever, that's a different story. But uh, anyways, those roles are filled, so that way there's a tank, there's a healer, and two DPS that do this random call to action, and it's a death match that happens within that area. And let's say the outcome of that death match has some factor in AP gain or something along those lines. The reason I am saying that if you up the ante in this area and you make things more interesting in this area, these are the imp keeps, right? This is what's needed to get emperorship. They're whatever hoops that you add in these areas, people are going to jump through those hoops, right? It's PvP, and it's the most form of intense PvP, especially in these areas if you add the NPC aspect that I'm talking about. Razamdar has entered the battlefield. Oh no, and Razamdar's got 10 elite guys with him or whatever. What's that look like? I don't even know this other hero's names. I don't think we know these other heroes' names. These guys enter the battlefield. Oh no, what's that look like? And what's the risk and reward to getting them off the board? And so this is what I'm proposing. And I don't think that you change the classes fundamentally. If you think about this, here we are 6 years in, and we've balancing the game and balancing the classes is going to be an ongoing thing forever, right? I don't think that we completely go back to. Um, I don't think we take 3 years or 4 years step backwards with PvP playstyle and abilities and casting and everything just to make the map in its current form work. You just change the map and you change the functionality of the game, you know. And I'm no programmer, but if you have a delve over here and it falls right on a line where, like, we could change the entrance to that delve to wherever, you know. We don't have to change the programming of the delve. It's still the delve when you enter it. It's just where are we entering it at. So this becomes a much more realistic option to me. Anyways, please share this on your guild um, di- discords, and let's start getting the conversation going on this. This is the direction that we need to go for PvP. I don't have all the answers yet, and really a lot of that stuff was just unfolded, but I've been thinking a lot about it. I don't want to see the PvP change in this game. And if it does, I'm not sure that I'll stay, and a lot of people are saying that as well. PvP is great, and that's what makes this game great is the current state of PvP. What is a pressure point or a point that everybody is frustrated about is the performance. The fact that the servers can't handle the power creep. Okay? Change change the board. All right. That's all I got for you guys. You guys please be safe and please do your part in sharing this message on guild discords and let's get this out. Thank you so much.